My girlfriend tried to trap me with a baby, but she had no clue I got a vasectomy. So my girlfriend tried to trap me with a baby, but she had no clue I had already gotten myself a vasectomy. That kid was never mine, not from the start. This whole mess unfolded over a few years, and honestly, if I knew how crazy it would get, I would have run for the hills before we even went on that first date. Anyway, let me lay it all out for you, from the top. Back then, I had a few close buddies from work, and they were all the type to go out with their wives or girlfriends on these little double dates. They kept asking me to come along, but I always told them I was not seeing anyone, so it would just be me third-wheeling it the whole night. They were not having that, though. They decided to set me up with someone whether I liked it or not. That is how I got introduced to her. One of my buddies knew this quiet girl who worked with him, and they figured we would hit it off. For the sake of this story, we will call her Paige. She was this shy, kind of awkward girl from a family that was not crazy strict or super religious, but they definitely kept an eye on her. At first, she seemed like she did not really fit in with the rest of us, but looking back now, I think she was playing innocent a whole lot better than any of us realized. I am not going to bother giving my friends and their wives or girlfriends names because they do not really matter much for most of this, but they are important when it comes to how Paige and I met and a couple of other key moments. So the six of us went out together one night, and to my surprise, Paige and I actually clicked pretty quick. We were drinking, laughing, having a good time, and by the end of the night, I ended up kissing her and paying for her ride home. It felt like a decent start, nothing too serious, just fun. Fast forward about 6 months, and somehow Paige is living with me. It just kind of happened, and for a while, it was actually pretty great. We hardly ever argued, and when we did, it was always over stupid stuff that we got over in a matter of minutes. I thought we were solid. Then one night, after we had ourselves a little fun in bed, I look down and see the condom tore wide open. Instant panic. I am talking heart pounding, stomach flipping, full-on freakout mode. I tell her right away, and she just brushes it off, tells me she is on birth control. I feel relieved at first, but then it hits me, she never once told me she was on anything. Or did she? She said maybe she mentioned it, but I was probably too glued to Fallout New Vegas to catch it. It was around the time that game dropped, so I guess that checks out, but looking back, that should have been a giant red flag waving right in my face. At the time, I figured it was just her being extra careful, and I actually felt kind of lucky to have someone so responsible. I thought we made a pretty good team. Condoms plus birth control equals safe, right? Wrong. About a week later, Paige starts puking her guts out, running to the bathroom constantly, barely able to keep food down. Yeah, I knew exactly where this was going. Pregnant. Now I am usually the kind of guy who keeps it together, but I am not going to lie, I lost my mind a little. Not at her, just in general. I had a decent job, made good money, enough that Paige only had to work part-time and go to school, but the idea of a baby just flipped my whole world upside down. I never went to college myself, always worked, and I had already moved up to a solid spot in my trade. I am not saying what I do because I do not want this getting traced back to me, but I was doing well. Still, babies change everything, and for Paige, that meant quitting school, staying home for a while, then probably getting a full-time job way sooner than she planned. I was not worried about me, I could handle it, but Paige had big plans for her future, and this was going to blow all of that up. In the end, Paige made the choice to end the pregnancy. She asked me not to say a word to her parents, since even though they were not super religious, they were still the kind who would see abortion as a huge deal. It had taken her months of convincing and me basically winning them over just to let us live together, so I knew better than to open my mouth. I was honestly surprised she went through with it. I wanted her to, for both of our sakes, but if she had decided to keep it, I would have stayed right there, worked my ass off, and raised that kid because I did love her. After that, we barely talked for about 4 months, and I figured we were done, but out of nowhere one night, everything went right back to how it was. I was so relieved, I did not even stop to think about how weird that was. Another red flag I totally ignored. After going through that whole mess, plus knowing she was supposedly on birth control, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I went and got myself a vasectomy. No more scares, no more surprises. I went to my regular doctor first, got referred to a specialist, and a week later I was icing my junk on paid vacation. Now, here is where I screwed up. I never told Paige. I know that sounds crazy, but she was out of town visiting family at the time, and I figured I would wait until she got back. I did not want to drop that bomb while she was sitting at her parents' dinner table. Her family's opinion always meant the world to her, and you will see later just how much that plays into this story. By the time she got back, work got crazy, and we both got so caught up in life that it just slipped my mind. You might think it is impossible to forget something that major, but when you are young, working non-stop, and constantly juggling a million things, some stuff just falls through the cracks. About 2.5 years roll by, and life is good. I had a couple promotions under my belt, felt like I was on top of the world, still crazy about Paige, and we were even talking about getting married after she finished school. At that point, we were comfortable enough together that we ditched the condoms and birth control. One day, Paige casually mentioned she got an intrauterine device to be extra safe. I thought it was kind of strange, considering I was snipped and all, but I figured maybe she was just extra cautious. Well, that was not exactly the case. Middle of August 2014, Paige gets sick again. This time we have no idea what is going on, so I rush her to the emergency room, all worried, only to find out she is pregnant. Now, you probably think I blew up right there, called her a cheater to her face, but I did not. I played the shocked boyfriend just like she did, told her everything would be fine, we would get through it together. Inside, though, I knew something was not right. In my state, unless the father signs the birth certificate in person, it does not mean anything legally, so the minute I got a chance to be alone, I went straight to my company's lawyer. He sent me to a guy who specializes in paternity stuff, and after about 10 days, I had my legal safety net in place. As far as Paige knew, I was clueless, just her supportive boyfriend. After all, we were not using anything at all, right? None. Turns out she had gotten the intrauterine device put in, but it was removed almost immediately because it caused her pain and swelling, and she never bothered to mention that to me. Or at least that is what I thought. Turns out she was not even charging half the time. She was hooking up with dudes just for fun, and the real money came from something a lot worse. She had been stealing prescription drugs from the people she was supposed to be helping, selling them on the side for cash. That abortion I thought was her first? Yeah, not even close. And in case I forgot to mention, she was in school training to become a registered nurse the whole time. She was sneaking pills any chance she got, pocketing painkillers from old folks, cancer patients, anyone too sick to notice. Looking back, I have no clue how she kept it hidden from her instructors, her parents, or me, but she did. Her biggest hustle was setting up her old clients, people she used to sell to. She would get them to either fake injuries or actually get hurt so they could get prescriptions, and then she would take a cut or just swipe some of the pills straight from them. Now this is where I started planning how to burn it all down. I hope you are still with me, because this is where it gets good. While she was pregnant, I kept my mouth shut. I did not say anything to her or her family or her friends or her teachers. She was getting close to graduating, getting close to having the baby, and on the outside everything looked picture perfect. Her family was proud, she was all smiles, and everyone thought we were on our way to living the dream. What she did not know was I had already rented my own apartment behind her back. See, the place we were living in was technically in her parents' name because they always wanted the option to boot me out if I ever messed up. Back then, I hated that, but it ended up being the best thing that could have happened to me. While she thought I was saving up for baby stuff, I was actually selling off all my expensive gear and moving it into my new place. My gaming computer, my laptop, my Xbox, all of it. When she asked why, I told her it was all for us and the baby. Now, this next part was risky, but I needed backup. The buddy who introduced us, I will call him Brian, and his wife, they were part of this too. Brian did not work with me anymore, so there was no risk to his job, and since his wife was technically Paige's boss at her part-time job, I figured they could help me out. I sat them down, laid everything out, showed them the proof, all the messages and emails. They went from shocked to sad to full-on furious in about 10 minutes. They had no idea she was playing both sides like that, acting sweet and innocent while running scams under their noses. Brian's wife admitted she had noticed little things going missing at work, cash drawers not adding up right, but Paige always had some excuse. She was not just scamming me, she was framing co-workers too. Nobody ever questioned her because she seemed too shy and sweet to be capable of something like that. Lucky for me, while Paige was out on maternity leave, they had installed new security cameras at her job, better quality, better angles. Brian's wife and I came up with a plan. The week she was supposed to give birth, everything started falling into place. She got wheeled into the hospital and stayed there for 3 nights before the baby arrived. Now, I need to make this clear, I have no hard feelings toward that kid. None. But at the time, all I could see was a symbol of how bad she had played me. Right after he was born, they took him away for some extra testing because he was a little jaundiced, and Paige did not even fight it. When they brought him back, she smiled at me and asked, "What should we name our son?" I swear to you, I felt like the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. I just looked at her and said, "Our son? You mean your son?" Whatever color was left in her face drained right out. Before she could even try to make up a lie, I raised my hand and said, "I got a vasectomy 6 months after we started dating." I saw her whole world collapse in her eyes. That was all the confirmation I needed. I told her flat out, "This baby is yours, only yours. Not ours. Yours." I got up, told her she was never going to see or hear from me again, and walked out of that hospital room without looking back. On my way out, I made sure to talk to the nurses and staff, told them I was her ex-boyfriend, not the father, and that under no circumstances should my name end up on that birth certificate. I explained that she cheated on me, was abusing drugs, and that the cord blood would probably confirm it. Later on, I found out I was right, she had enough junk in her system to flag the test, but thankfully the baby was okay. I made it crystal clear that if Paige tried to tell them I was her boyfriend or the father, they should not believe her. I said if they needed proof, I would happily provide it. Then I left, went straight to my new apartment, and never looked back. Now I know you might be thinking that was not much of a punishment, but trust me, I was just getting warmed up. Once I knew she was home from the hospital, I left my old keys and $400 in cash in an envelope at her place. I wanted her to know I knew everything, but I also wanted to see what she would do with it. My money was on one of 3 things: either she would blow it all on pills, sell her beat-up car to get more money, or start crying to her mom and dad about how unfair life was. Turns out she did all 3. Meanwhile, I was already in the clear at work and with her parents. The second her parents picked her up from the hospital and realized I was not there, she went full meltdown. She called them crying, told them everything, said I was a horrible person, and she was ready to throw me out, but surprise, I was already gone. All she found was that envelope with the cash and the keys. I do not know exactly what went through her head, but she must have figured I skipped town. When she tried calling my work, they told her I was no longer there, because I had warned them in advance. When she asked Brian, he said he had not heard from me either. She thought she got away with it all, just her and the baby and no consequences. That did not last long. A few weeks later, she got fired. The new security cameras caught her red-handed, messing with the cash drawers and setting up her co-workers to take the fall. She ran crying to her parents, swearing she was innocent, and they believed her. That is when the packages started arriving. One went to her school, full of proof that she was stealing and selling drugs. Her school had a zero-tolerance policy for that kind of thing, so she was expelled immediately. Another package went to the hospital where she worked, and one more to the local police department. Her parents disowned her when they saw all the proof. She lost her job, her career, her reputation, and her chance at getting her nursing license. Child Protective Services got involved too. In the end, she lost everything, including custody of her kid. The baby ended up with his biological father, who turned out to be a guy named Daniel. He was almost 30, divorced, lonely, and totally blindsided by the whole thing. But he had a good house, a stable income, and a clean record, so he got full custody after the paternity test. Here is the best part: Daniel was the guy she hooked up with on the very first night I met her, when we all went out as a group. That is right, the first guy she cheated with was sitting right across the table from me. He works at my company too.
In the end, Paige has no home, no job, no career, no friends, a permanent record, and no contact with her kid.
Me? I have my job, my apartment, and my life back. And best of all, I am not the baby daddy.